here. So I'll call, that's 7:02. I'll call the Finance Committee to order. Oh, man, I need my, do you have an agenda? Oh, awesome, thank you, Jean. I'll just, yeah, I'll leave it so you can see it too. Actually, that's good, I can use this. All right, cool. Much to my chagrin, there's way too many bullets on this. This feels like a select board agenda. So we'll try to get through this thing as quickly as possible. Everyone's seen the agenda, correct? Everyone's got it. So I'm not going to go through all the bullets, but we'll start probably a little bit different. You're kind of from Liaison Reports. I'm just kind of going to go around the room, and if you have one, great. If you don't, then we'll just kind of handle it like the other boards do. Versus me, I think what I did in the past was just kind of leave it open, and anyone who raise their hand, they can. So I'll just kind of go around the room. I'll start with Jean.
Nope.
Joe, any reports? Jeffrey?
I mean, I think most of us listen to the school committee
Yep.
meetings. The big thing that I think we need to bring back here to discuss is the plan for full-day kindergarten, which they kind of threw out to us and said, here are a couple of ways that we think we might be able to do it, but we really need guidance from Fincom as to, can we change the 60 whatever it is % shift to kind of shift some money back and forth. They suggested maybe allocating all income from new growth to covering the full-day kindergarten, or using, maybe using more free cash.
Yep.
But they're looking to kind of get up to that 1 million, a little more than $1 million that will cost to fully fund it over some number of years.
Yep.
Whether it's 1 year, which they kind of decided was probably too aggressive, or 6 years, which they all felt was way too conservative and wasn't getting us where we needed to be.
Yep.
When we needed to. But we need to kind of see if we can fill in the numbers there.
Yeah, and I think, and they settled on the 3-year, and that's like kind of a slow wean off of
Yeah.
the tuition, were we north of 4,000?
Yeah.
North of 4,000 to 3,600 to 2 to 1, something along those lines. That some of those numbers get a little blurry, but yeah, that's probably the main one, Jeffrey. That kind of came from that. That was the main bullet that I had.
Yeah.
Anything from you, Marianne?
Well, I'm a select board liaison, and so I think by now we all know that there's also per our bullet that there's going to be a change in the way the ARPA committee is run. But just as a preliminary thing, I really want to thank you, Ed, and Eugenie for your leadership in the last 6 months. And I think we as a board, I'm very proud of us. We got a lot done to set it up to move forward in a good way, and I just really appreciate we work towards it, and I think we'll just still keep working the same way we were going to, and we just don't have to set the meeting schedule now. And see, I think that there's ongoing talk with Mr. Doxer that they're going to pursue the Meadowbrook easement, and I don't know, they'll come back to us when there's a cost on that. I think they have to meet with Meadowbrook some more. Last I saw, they were planning the widths of the trails and things like that, and understanding
Yep.
the scope of it. He was meeting with some other boards, so in terms of that coming back to us when they get an easement, we got some kind of grant from the state.
$150,000.
So that may be able to help that.
That's exactly what it's for.
Yep, that's great.
Okay, so that's kind of just the essence of things. There's lots more, but that directly impact our meetings.
Nope, that's perfect. Thanks, Marianne. Anything from you, Mark? Jackie?
So the RMLD board is meeting tonight, as I understand it, but their most recent meeting in mid-January, the general manager gave a presentation on the 2022 basic rate structure and billing process. He also talked about the fact that the district is updating consumer communications across its ratepayer base. He then gave an update on the power supply, including some long-term generation contracts, and talked about how some of those become more feasible because of RMLD's status as a municipal light district. Also, general manager talked about the fact that we would like to receive an update from RMLD sometime in March. So I'll work with
Yep.
you, Ed,
Yep.
to make sure that we connect the dots to get that before us next
Yep.
month.
No, that sounds good. And then similarly, I think it's Conservation reached out and they wanted to present to us as well. So sometime in March. So I just got to circle back and on that one too, and just kind of fit it in schedule-wise when we're doing other things with the budget and so forth. Sorry, Eric. Anything on your end? I didn't want to forget you.
Not a problem, Ed, nothing on my end, thanks.
Yeah, so then the only things that I'll kind of fill in, and again, I couldn't, thank you, Jeffrey and Mary Ann for your two updates. The only one that I had from the select board perspective was just the, and Bob kind of talked about it before the meeting started, a little bit about water. And I know we've talked about, the kind of the water reserve funds, things of that nature. And so as part of our, kind of, ongoing discussions, talking about, kind of free cash projections and so forth. And I think we talked about having some type of a water stabilization fund, Bob. Is that what we kind of talked about,
I know at
or
some
like?
point last fall, you were gonna consider whether you needed a policy on reserves.
Yes.
Much like free cash.
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah. So so having that same type of policy. So that may be a future agenda item, but that just. That talk over the last couple of select board meetings just kind of triggered that in my mind as well. So, but then, so outside of that, then we can kind of just go on to the next topic, which is the ARPA subcommittee, and I can just kind of give again a quick update for the rest of the for Fincom that I'll give you the Reader's Digest version of kind of where we're at, as kind of Marianne alluded to in her update. So it was just in the Jan 18th and Feb 1st select board meetings, more of kind of a good discussion with the select board about ARPA just in general. At that point, they reviewed, some of the documentation that we created on our side that were part of our, kind of meeting minutes, and again, I think there, that discussion led to, well, we were very kind of a little bit more simple in what we approved on our side because we, again. One new charted area for us as far as creating a subcommittee of that nature, but then we also didn't want to leave it, kind of with a too narrow of a focus, and but then also didn't want to make it very large, talking about every source of funds out there because it was very specific to ARPA, and then how that relates to this is under the select board's purview. I think at the end of the day. The concern of the kind of the structure of having a finance subcommittee advising select board, and then also not having kind of a kind of a more of a charter or kind of a direction. Kind of led from the 18th meeting to the meeting on the 1st, where and in the interim. Gene and I had a few conversations with Karen and with Mark as far as kind of leveraging the documentation and things that we talked about on our side, and then just kind of informing them and giving them kind of the baseline for what they put together, and then really at the end of the day, it's the select board put together a and I always get it's RAC. It's not. I always want to call it something else. It's actually RAC. It's AA. It's the Select Board Reading ARPA Advisory Committee. So that the mask is killing that joke a little bit. But I was gonna. But so they basically set up that sub, agreed on membership, and so I think before we kind of get to the to the membership as far as at least on that side, that's kind of like a really quick and dirty, kind of update. I'll kind of open it up if anyone has any questions about that, or I'm probably already telling you everything that you already know anyways, but, so if there's any questions, happy to answer them before we kind of go on to the vote to dissolve our sub. Any questions? Go ahead, yeah, go ahead, Joe.
Just thank Jean again for the thoughts that she put into it. And the idea was, to kind of get a big picture idea that we would not, make so many decisions on yes, this, not that, but how are we going to prioritize? What's the right way to think about it? And I think that was an important idea, a good concept. So, let's hope we can still, do that, not just for ARPA, but also, look at the free cash, which, is significant at this point. And how do we determine what's the right way to spend that free cash? Because it's a lot of money, but it can go quickly if we don't look at the priorities properly.
Jeffrey, I think I couldn't echo both comments. Again, a lot of the work and that thought process really, and if you haven't seen what was in the select board packet, it is kind of very reflective of the goals that we had in mind. From that perspective, and so and that came across in a lot of the the kind of the sidebar conversations that we had with Mark and with Karen, but then also kind of within the meeting itself. And so again, I think a lot of the work there is, and I do think now that charge, for lack of a better term, for this subcommittee is appropriate, because again, the way that I've looked at it and we've kind of talked about is that, yes, it's specific to ARPA, but there are going to be, in that prioritization or that, kind of talking about projects big and small, that's going to have repercussions, because if you use ARPA for something, especially if it's something that's already been identified, well, that leaves a hole someplace else. And then, so there's, so that it will hit upon other funding sources. And as such, then, you kind of end up reshuffling that, that deck, and now you have more things available to you to work on. So, and I think the discussion on, kind of free cash, that's actually, kind of a later bullet that we'll kind of talk about, because that's led, kind of conversations amongst us with Sharon, who's been, amazing. And literally entertaining every possible scenario that we could ever come up with, but looking at, just free cash in and of itself. But, I'll kind of save that. I'll just tease it. We'll just tease it a little bit, but it is something that I think is going to be very, very helpful, and it's in a lot of ways very eye-opening, for me, as we kind of went through it, as far as, when you look at the balances that we have free cash and just, just playing it out, and playing out a couple of different scenarios, what happens over time. So I think that, so I think those all kind of lend it to each other. But I think it's also to your point, Jeffrey, that I think a similar thing that we need to be able to be looking at as far as capital in and of itself. I think there's, some interesting thoughts as far as, do we, how do we, kind of do the same type of projections and things like that as it relates to capital. There's thoughts on those things as well. So any other questions, comments on that? Perfect. All right, so then, and because this is your last FinCom meeting, Bob, I'm going to lean on you again. So what's the process that we need to do here? Because we voted to create this, we have to we basically just need a vote to dissolve the FinCom ARPA committee, subcommittee?
Yep, just as simple as that.
All right, Jean.
Just a quick question.
Oh, okay.
Has the school committee been looped into where we're at?
Yes, they have.
As long as, just don't want to do anything without making sure.
2 weeks ago.
Thank you.
Yeah, and they have it on their agenda for tomorrow.
Beautiful.
Yep.
Then I move to dissolve the FinCom ARPA subcommittee.
Second.
Thanks, Joe. I'm going to go around. I'll start with Eric.
Yes.
Yes. Jackie?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Mary Ann?
Yes.
Jeffrey?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Jean?
Yes.
And Ed, yes. That's 8-0. All All right, we are ripping through this agenda as I had hoped. Perfect. All right, so then now next on the agenda is to discuss and vote to appoint the ex officio FinCom members to Select Board, Reading, ARPA, Advisory Committee, RAAC. So kind of before we start the discussion on that, the one thing that I wanted kind of and talk about a little bit too, the way that I think it was settled, it was altered a little bit during the Select Board meeting. I think originally it was 2 Select Board members, 2 FinCom members, 2 school committee members, and 1 Library of Trust, a member. And then, but it would end up being settled on that would, because our original one had 3 because we were talking about odd numbers. So there was a lot of dated stuff in there, but the final version has 3 FinCom members, as part of it. So the one, and so just kind of just a one point I kind of want to bring up on my side. In the when we set it up originally, it made sense for the chair and vice chair for FinCom to be part of our subcommittee.
Yeah.
So, but this is kind of new territory, and so as it relates to kind of voting and appointing, there's no seats that are already filled. So if anyone that I encourage folks that are interested in that want to be a part of it to not feel that wherever we had associated with the last one is automatically going to fill the seats for this one. At least, like, I'm going to speak for the chair and the vice chair. We're not kind of going into it with that in mind. If there's folks that want to be able to do it, there's a likelihood that there's an opportunity for folks to be able to participate and be a part of it. So so I wanted to be able to kind of start there. I don't I didn't want it to be like a foregone conclusion. Oh, hey, Gina and Marianne were already on it, so that's what it's going to be. It doesn't have to. It certainly doesn't have to be that way. There's no designs on on my side as far as like I have to be like I might pound the table, but I don't plan on it. From that perspective. So that said, and I just feel that was important because I want to make sure that that folks know that it's that again nothing's been decided. So kind of with that, and I don't know the best way to be able to do it. I'll just open it up for discussion, and if folks anyone wants to kind of volunteer, I'm happy to kind of hear it. Go ahead, Jean. Yes, sure.
I actually just want to echo what Ed said. I personally am interested in this work and I'm happy to do it. I think it's a really neat opportunity. I think it's an opportunity to work with select board members, school committee members, the new town manager. I think it's a really cool opportunity. So if there's anyone sitting here who's like, I wish I really like to do this work, I am more than happy to let someone else serve. So I just want to echo what Ed was saying. Happy to do the work if no one else raises their hand, but if anyone's interested, delighted to miss those meetings.
Well, and I think that's the other point that I wanted to be able to say too, and because there's a lot of opportunity that I have, and maybe Gina, I don't want to speak for you.
No, I
we
think
already
that's
have, and
Yeah.
we had a hand in how it was put together with, Karen and Mark were gracious enough to be able to come, so we already have that, kind of facility as chair and vice chair. So then I think you put it much better than I did, and you took it a lot less time, which was also important. But I think we are afforded that as kind of being chair and vice chair, that it's not necessarily
Don't be polite.
Believe me, yes, exactly. Well, you're chair, so you don't have to be polite. Go ahead, Karen. Sure.
As far as I know, the school committee is still planning on the same people they had discussed. They hadn't done any voting. They'll take care of it, was how they communicated to me. And I understood from last night that Andrew Grimes from the Library Board of Trustees was appointed.
Oh, okay, great. I didn't know that.
From
Yep.
the select board, it'll be Mark Doctor, Chris Hale.
And Chris Hale. Yep. Exactly. Yep. So yeah. So with that, again, open it up to folks. Anyone who wants to, kind of raise their hand and volunteer.
Well, I'll just say, because I volunteered before, and I'm just looking at all of our terms and when they expire, and my term runs till 2023, so there'll be some continuity. I'm not running for anything. I plan on staying here. So I think I'd be happy to be again on it.
Thanks, Marianne.
I'd be interested in it.
Thanks, Jeffrey.
But what if you get in?
So I'd probably withdraw,
Oh,
because Chuck is running.
I didn't know that.
So I'm waiting to see the certification.
We might be a little far afield from the agenda. Sorry.
Okay.
Anybody else that's interested in?
I'll raise my hand, I guess.
Yeah, Joe.
You sure? Like, as long as it's okay, like with you guys. So.
No, absolutely. I mean, and again, I don't want to just speak too much. Like, I'm really glad, Joe, that you did, and specifically just for people's education purposes. Joe reached out, kind of separately while we were kind of creating this. Reached out to Gene and I, and had kind of thoughts as far as how to be able to kind of look at outriders. So it's again, that was Joe, you were one of the reasons why I wanted to be able to open it up that way, because you kind of came at it with kind of fresh ideas and a new way of looking at things, and I think those are super important, from that perspective. So I again, I'm happy to be able to look at other people that want to be able to participate as well, but.
We're still gonna be open meetings. We're definitely gonna have, I'm sorry, I should have actually recognized.
Sorry. I was actually, last time you formed it, someone asked me a question afterwards. These are all posted meetings, open meetings. You're all welcome to attend, virtually or in person. If there's going to be a quorum, you do need to tell us so that, if 5 of you went, then Fincom also needs to be posted, and the same with the other boards.
Exactly.
So it's not an exclusive club from participation standpoint.
No, that's, and actually, I meant to mention that too, Bob. That's actually an excellent, that's what we talked about,
Absolutely.
when we were talking about it, it is, kind of open from that perspective. Sorry, Jackie.
Just a question about process. Excuse me. My understanding is that the select board's vote 2 weeks ago on the makeup of the committee charges us with choosing 3
Yes.
representatives. Is that correct?
Yeah, it is 3.
Okay.
Yes, it is 3. Yep.
Yeah, just checking.
Yep.
And on the agenda here, it says ex officio, and that's what you said. So that typically ex officio means they're not voting members. Is that correct? That only the select board members are voting on that committee? Or?
For town council, it means by virtue of your position on the finance committee.
Okay.
So if somebody moves out of state, you can easily put another person in there.
Okay.
That's all that means. And you guys are restricted by the charter on how often you can serve on which committees. It's the same way we did the town manager screening committee. It's all legal, and we're all
Okay.
safe if we do it this way.
I think another aspect is related to if you have to take an oath to be on the next committee too. Was there something like
Yeah.
that, Bob?
Yeah. Yeah, if it's ex officio, you don't have to take another oath. Taking an oath with the town clerk is a fun thing to do, though.
That is true. Well, again, so then, do we have to do these one at a time, or do we do these all together? Like, what's the process on our
Typically,
side?
you'd throw names into nomination, and then, if there's 3 names and you need 3, you're kind of all set.
Okay.
Can
Otherwise,
we
you need to
nominate
vote.
3 at one time?
Yeah.
I would like to nominate
Yep, let's do it.
Joe and Marianne and Jeffrey as the 3 ex officio members of the Select Board ARPA Advisory Committee.
I second.
Thanks, Jackie. All right, we will take a vote. Eric, get ready. We're going to have you on mute in a second. You're the first. All right, Eric, go ahead.
Yes.
Thank you. Jackie?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Marianne?
Yes.
Jeffrey?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Jean?
Yes.
And Ed, yes. 8-0. Awesome. I am thrilled to have, you folks be able to, to be able to do
Not
it.
have to go to more meetings.
No, Jeffrey,
He'll be at all the meetings.
I am gonna go.
anyway.
And again, to Bob's point, that, actually, I had that in my notes. I don't know why I'm not looking at my notes. But that's exactly, that was the other point that I plan on being there anyways. Whether, and so, it's very hard for me to stay quiet. So I'll be participating as well. So yeah, I may be asked to leave, but I'll still be there as well. Awesome. Terrific. All right, so, that is almost half of the agenda. What are we, like half an hour in?
That's true.
All right, terrific. So now we are on to discuss the new Fincom website and give guidance to staff. So I'll just kind of be able to start off. Jean and Mary Ann, thank you. Just thank you all. I've seen kind of some of the correspondence, but just thank you for taking the responsibility and the undertaking to do this work. So maybe just to kind of start out, I'll just kind of like throw it to the two of you, just to kind of give a quick update, or no adjective, give an update as far as the kind of the process and where you're at and where it's headed.
Did you take the, read, right, you talk one part and I would talk the other?
Yes, I'll do the first part.
There was not supposed to be any coordination. I think that's I don't know.
You
Okay.
don't want to see the chaos if you
Okay.
don't coordinate.
Yep, sounds good.
So yeah, Mary Ann and I, thank you to the committee for asking us to do this work. We were able to meet with Jackie and Jane on town staff, and I have to say, they've really described well what the new town website's going to be. It's going to be amazing. I'm super excited about it. So this is a perfect time for the FinCom to come in and look at what is on the website and think through, does this accurately describe to a common, resident or voter what FinCom does, a potential volunteer, I might want to be on FinCom, what do they do? And Mary Ann, much more than me, did an enormous amount of research on peer communities' websites. And so if you look at the packet, it says draft Town of Reading website for discussion purposes only in red. This is sort of what we came up with. Much of it is taken from other communities who we think do a really nice job of describing what a finance committee does. I will say I did not find a typical fiscal year for the finance committee. Mary Ann found that, but it's brilliant. I mean, it really describes for the community, if you join FinCom, what is your year going to look like? So if you compare this, we didn't put it in the packet, but if you compare this to what's on the website now, it's much more thorough, it's much more readable. I think it's a really good place. So we can certainly entertain any edits or changes. So the proposal we have is when you land, if you go to the Town of Reading website and you click on the Finance Committee, you're going to get this description with what a year, what the FinCom does, what a year in the FinCom looks like. You will get the list of current FinCom members and their terms, and that'll sort of be the landing page, and that's sort of what I took the lead on. So that's what you see here. I'm going to kind of turn it over to Mary Ann now. She did a tremendous amount of work on kind of how the menu bar should be laid out, what information should be on the website, what would be most user-friendly for the public.
Well, I think she had a lot of links, and I guess it's kind of hard with the people on the computer, but if I show you Concord's website, it's kind of a cheat, and I can just kind of show you. Our website is going to be in this format. When I did my research, a lot of the town websites are kind of in 2 or 3 canned formats from the same Civics Plus company. And we found a lot of inspiration in Concord and Winchester in terms of what they have. If I click, and I'm should be doing screen shares, but if I go to their Finance Committee page, and I thought I had it up, but I will just re-bring it up. So,
You want to ask if Jackie or
Yes, you could probably put it there.
yeah, I guess Jackie, if you went to,
On it.
There she goes.
all right, so if
Jackie,
you go to the.
come on, best in the business.
The Concord
Radar.
Finance Committee, we're kind of adopting something like what they would have, because I didn't create it, we had it with Jane. If you just scroll down, and some of the, the links would be similar to ours, but I guess one of the things that I thought we could have, and it'll just be more organized, because our website has a lot of old information. I don't have this formal presentation, and one of the things that I thought we could have, and maybe this is something I'm putting on town manager. So this is why I got a page from Chelsea, so you'll be familiar. Most of the budgets, and this is, I'm sorry, this is gonna be on paper. We haven't seen this in one of our budgets. This is fiscal year 2014 from Reading, where we have our spending scorecard and kind of a pie chart. And this was it in FY '22 with a lot of numbers. Sorry, my printer ran out of colored ink. I have to go to Staples, so we don't have nice colors. So this was, I think this is Chelsea. Chelsea has an annual budget with like some nice charts like this. I think on the Fincom page, it would be nice to have a landing, and I'm not trying to create more work. If we have something in our budget, we can have a hyperlink to it. Andover actually just updated their page, and it's amazing, but they're also using, Andover and Wakefield have, they pay for an open checkbook service, so someone can go to their finance page and it has all in one page, the answers to the questions, how much are you spending on things. We can kind of fake it with, it won't be dynamic, but we'll just have, here's the static picture from our budget of where our money's going, what was our balance in free cash. There are some, we have the information here, I think a different format. Again, I don't wanna create more work, but it answers questions when people say, well, how much are we spending
Yep.
on water, how much are the schools spending? That's where the town school split is there. It kind of ties into town stuff, but I think it would be a useful thing on a finance committee webpage, because I've seen it on some other ones. Andover's now even has, like, you can get the total town payroll, but that's a lot, they're paying for that service. But I've seen that on a few, so other than, it was really us with Jane and Jackie saying, let's keep some things on our website. A lot of our financial forum presentations, I think it would be nice to have them there. I think we need to get our packets linked, and we probably need to get them into the archive, because there haven't been any Fincom packets since May 2016 yet. That's kind of beyond the jurisdiction of the current makeup of Fincom. So,
The minutes are there, though, right?
the minutes are there.
So,
Did I
mean,
misspeak? The packets aren't
Yeah,
there?
no, no.
Packets are-
You
you
have had a
It would be
request
nice
for
to have
packets to
packets.
please be published on the calendar, like the select board packet is.
Yep.
Yeah, and one of the things, and this is something, I don't know if it's a question for Jackie, it used to be Caitlin who was doing, the admin work at FinCom, so I'm wondering if when there was a changeover, not all the board packets go.
But we actually went back and got them all up since 2020. So everything going back to 2020, I think, is in there. Definitely 2021. But yeah, I think there's a little gap between 2018 and 19, but we can go back and add those. They're in Laserfiche, they're not on the website. So there's the link from the website to Laserfiche. to
Okay.
this.
Wow.
So, I think our whole town website is gonna be changing to this new format, and I wish I had more of a presentation of what our website would look like. Jane gave Jeannie and I a nice preview, and it's gonna be really cool.
Yeah.
But I think to be useful for us and just to answer questions, we have some decent info, but I wish we would have our financial forum presentations, the guidance there. But just like our town assessor page has good info in one place, you can get the tax rate, you could have different property map search tools. I think to answer budgetary questions, it would be nice to have that, and the information is there. I think we just have to link to it, not create too much work. So that was that, and we were gonna follow up and help populate when the new website is up with the right information.
If I can just add, everything Marianne said, I think there's gonna be a little bit of back and forth with staff, and it's gonna be a little awkward to come to FinCom and have a standing agenda item to be like, we thought we would move this and add this. So I think one of the things we're looking here for tonight is the Finance Committee comfortable deputizing us to work with staff to kind of get this up and running, and then we can look back when it's up and say, hey, here's everything we've got. It's a website. It's not like once it's done. It's iterative. So you could say, hey, add this or take that away. But we would like the ability to kind of work with staff to say, and I really like what Marianne said, we really want to make sure we're leveraging information that already exists in the budget and putting it on the website. We do not want to create work for staff. We don't want to, but the information's there. We just think it can be a lot more accessible to the public. The only thing I'm going to add is we do have 2 suggestions for a change in FinCom protocol. If the Finance Committee is comfortable with our year in the life of FinCom description, I would suggest that every summer it be sort of a standard practice that we look at the website. There's some data out there that is like more than 10 years old. It's a brainstorming session from 2010. So I think annually for the FinCom in the summer months after town meeting just seems like the right time to say, let's look at the website, what can be archived, not deleted, but archived. It doesn't need to be front and center. It's old, it's outdated, it's not helpful. So I'd like to get that on our annual calendar. It's just a thing we do every year in the summer. And Jackie was just incredibly supportive. One idea that Marion and I had, I don't remember which one of us, both together, was just to have a standing agenda item at the end of every FinCom meeting to just say what from this meeting needs to go on the website. And Jackie, we were worried that created work for her, and she was like, that would be wonderful for me. She was so supportive of that. So we'd like to make it a standing agenda item that at the end of the meeting we say that presentation, this packet, this should all be on the website, so she'll know, and she claims, I don't know if I believe her, she claims it's very easy for her to do. But so we thought just sort of us having that discipline every meeting of saying what from this meeting should be out on the website for the public to see.
And it's gonna be more like, think of our month of December, when it was, we were a joint meeting with select board, so okay, all of the budget presentations that eventually town meeting sees, you have to know, oh, it's not even a FinCom packet, it's a select board packet, and it's only part of it. So maybe like those presentations, and we don't have forever, we just have the most recent year. So it will help town meeting members, I think, too, to say, okay, you know, why did the library want this money? Why did Public Works want this money? And they already created the presentations and they've come to us as attachments, so it's just not everyone remembers exactly which meeting, which packet. I do.
So the only trouble that I had with that is that it was gonna be an additional, that means it's on me. It's an additional agenda item, and I heard discipline. That's another thing that I'm worried about as well. But no, fantastic
It's
ideas.
like right before you approve the minutes.
I got one foot out the door, Marianne, when that happens. So that's my only, yeah, no, I think those are fantastic ideas, and I think that's, you know, again, having the guidepost that it's not taxing on staff is paramount. So I love the fact that that was, you know, kind of so integral into your, you know, the process, and you know, so I'm thrilled with all that. I think that sounds terrific. Questions from the rest of the committee?
I mean, just an observation, I think it's great, like, the work you guys did, first of all, but I'm just trying to think, like, I think the more, and Marianne, you hit on, like, the more you can visualize the data, like the pie charts, like anything like that to make it easy, so
Yeah.
people can, you know, get the big picture.
Like, when I
So-
looked at, one of the things that everyone always notices at the start of town meeting is that thing that Sharon's maintaining, that running free chart line graph. And it's easy, and you look at it and you say, wow, look, we're way ahead. Look at all the free cash we have, or look, we've been, right before the override, look, we're spending it down. I mean, people are visual,
Yeah.
and especially if the work has already been created. I would swear, Bob, in some past town meetings,
Yeah.
you might have had, where does something go? And it's not in the formal budget document, but you created it, the work was done. And your town manager will probably do the
And the
same
schools used to
thing.
divide up the dollar, if you remember that visual.
Right.
Yep.
This is how much this goes to each out of the dollar bill.
Well,
Yeah, that's right.
I think why it's gonna be especially important now and leading to, your discussion about the free cash use is if schools are really gonna want this kindergarten initiative, I think there's gonna be a lot of talk about the town-school split, and I think everyone really needs to know, well, where are all the town dollars going? Because people just think, well, let's just shift $1 million, but then $1 million means, as Jeannie said at school committee meetings, $1 million means, well, there's $1 million cut from the town side. So knowing where the town dollars go to is important. So if people think a shift can be made, it's just helpful, it'll be a helpful tool to visualize. It's not gonna happen immediately.
I mean, I think that's a key point. I mean, and again, the devil's in the details. It's going from the words to what it actually means. You know what I mean? There's a lot of talk, you know, like, you know, we've talked about this a lot. There's, you know, you're kind of demystifying a lot of the, you know, kind of the tag words that, you know, that are thrown around quite a bit. And I think that's the goal of a lot of this, is to try to give as much transparency as possible and educate as many people as possible. all that being said, it's probably a small fraction of the town that's going to be educated. But it's good work, and hopefully, us evangelizing it will, kind of get more eyeballs on it as well. But I think it still ends up being, kind of it's going to be a useful tool for all of us because you can point people to it. But I think it's not going to absolve us from having to do that education and advisory as we're chartered to do. So.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if it's like embedded in Fincom policies, but just to kind of walk through, especially with inflation, okay, what it means like 2.5% a year, like where you have constraints going forward.
Yep.
Like how the whole budget
And
process works
showing what
from a dollar,
regeneration-
what the allocation is, what's put aside for capital, like, just
And
to kind of break
Right,
that down.
and this is
yeah.
all in those town meeting presentations, I guess. There's so much to steal.
Yeah.
Usually, people,
Borrow.
yeah, well, we don't have work.
Publicize.
That's right. Yes, we'll get there.
Okay.
But I think the more you can tell that story, like, to people, right, like, well, okay, so 2.5%, we have inflation of 5% next year, right, the town split, how things come together, right?
Yep. So, oh, go ahead. No, please, yeah.
So I look to Arlington a lot for I guess benchmarking opportunities, and the town manager he does an interview. It's your Arlington dollar, and if you Google it, like it's on YouTube, and he does it every once in a while, and it's trying to do that, like to debunk the complexity of the budget, right?
Yep.
And share high level of things. One thing that we talked about tonight in preparation of town meeting in April is pre-recording presentations, right? And doing things, that can be distributed and can be posted on a website and can be socialized and shared with everybody. And I'll make sure that we get Ed Ross to do a presentation,
Jean texted me as we were getting out of that. She's like, you almost got away with it. I almost got
It was almost in writing.
it was almost in writing completely, and then just at the last second, I forget who mentioned it, but.
We had a lot of new town meeting members this year too. This is one of these 10-year things
Ivrea
with
did. It was Ivrea.
everyone's gonna rerun. So it won't just be the slate of 180 who know it all too. It may be a lot of new people.
Yeah,
that-
totally.
That's true.
Yep.
So that will really benefit having those videos.
Yep. Yeah, so again, it was, I was just about ready to sign off, and I'm like, no, okay, yeah, I'm doing a presentation after all. Yeah, so but I think that's, I do think that'd be very helpful. Go ahead, Jack.
Just a comment and a question. I really like the calendar year, year at a glance, how it's written out, to your point, Marianne, both for kind of existing and prospective committee members, but also for the public to understand how we're walking through this process. And then one question I had on our packet, it's our packet, page 2, but it's the first page of the draft. The bullet points for the responsibilities of the committee, just a question, and it's kind of more a nit than anything, is the reporting, according to the town charter, the finance committee shall submit a written report of all findings, approvals, and disapprovals, at least 7 days before town meeting. So if there's an opportunity, just as a friendly amendment, to put a little bit more specifics about that responsibility.
I'm really
Yeah.
glad you just said that, because in red where it says draft discussion, town of Reading website for discussion purposes only, it should also say has not had legal review.
Okay.
Which was absolutely part of the process. We wanted to bring it to the committee first in case there were any big concerns, like, oh, don't do this, or we want to add this. But I do think this should run by town council for the exact reason you're saying, but Mary and I can absolutely bring up that specific point. It's a good add.
Right, like when we were doing it, we quoted the charter when we said, here's the terms. And there's actually, it was interesting because I went back and forth with Jeannie, like, what's the technicality? We can serve 3 consecutive 3-year terms. Can someone serve, maybe you'll know in the history of it, has someone served 2 terms, then gone off, then serve 2 more terms, then
Yes.
go off.
Yeah, you can do that. You
So-
can be on this until you are 80 if you want. Yes, you just have to do it carefully.
So we wanted to, some people
No,
think,
not-
oh,
Bob
no.
can come back on, you know.
Exactly.
Bob
No,
can come back on, he's a resident.
But yeah,
We wanted to make it clear, you can't be on other standing committees or be an employee of the town, because people may want to do this, but
Right.
that's.
Yeah, and I totally, I see and appreciate the, quoting of
Right, so no, it's
charter.
important, it's good to get that other part. And then does the charter mean writing, like literal paper writing, or is it satisfied by a presentation at town meeting?
Okay.
Do I
Yeah.
want
Pre-recorded
someone
meeting at RCTV.
Yeah.
there we go.
It's satisfied by the record of your votes on all the warrant articles and the budget lines.
Yeah, so
Yeah, I
then,
think
so then
that's-
that's effectively.
Yeah, that's how I took it.
taken
It was,
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah,
it's.
and just, you know, it'll be Fidel's nightmare. Make sure the legal review also takes into account the current practice.
Right.
Because, you know, it might say it's required 7 days, but the current practice is try to get it to town meeting 2 or 3 weeks in advance. So,
Yep.
I think the town clerk is also really good with those deadlines usually, because she knows when she has to get the warrant closes and everything, so everyone backdates from that.
Yep.
right, yep.
Go ahead, Richard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think this is wonderful. There's no onboarding process for new finance committee members. There's a lot of institutional knowledge that has to get passed on. I think this is amazing, and I have been looking for an opportunity to get my hands on the finance committee handbook. So could this be Fidel's problem too? Have any of you guys seen it?
I have seen it in other towns, the Mass
This is,
Association.
so this is from October 2021, $29 for a downloadable version, which I'm sure could be distributed to everyone.
We used
It
to
would
do that.
probably, because I was gonna ask.
It's,
Steal and
I
borrow.
didn't hear
no, it's a
that.
public document.
Steal and borrow.
Did they really? Because
I think that I
did
know
they
I've
publish
seen
it? Okay, so if we
Southborough
could get
has
a
it
copy
too.
of this, that would probably be as well, good. I was going
I'd
to
love
ask
that
if this came from that.
Under finance committee documents on Concord, they have,
It's right on the MMA website.
yeah. I sign.
Anyway, so that would be probably helpful. I would love to get my hands on a copy of that.
Maybe it's the South.
And I had a couple of little specific comments I can send to you afterwards, like the order of things, the select board approves warrant articles and then finance committee reviews them. But I really see this as being wonderfully educational and helpful. So thank you.
Here it is, Southborough has it, the Association of Town Finance Committees, 2017.
All right, so they have one from October 2021, so I
So
think
there's
we
a
want to
newer
go.
one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
So the Denise Baker, who's the NI coordinator, is a Reading resident. So yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Great.
I have no problem with deputizing Jean and Mary Ann to do this work. No, just that, it's a webpage, they're not deleting anything, maybe
Oh,
something will be a
absolutely.
little harder to work with, but, anytime we have a meeting, if one of us has an objection to something, we can certainly bring it up. Or just email them, hey, I
Yeah.
noticed this, I think that's too hard to find, whatever, right?
Yep.
That since we're just talking about reorganizing and not creating a new list of things we're gonna do,
Yep.
then I
agree.
I certainly feel confident that they can organize a website without, every meeting having to go through nitpick.
No, it's more just like, let's add it, and then
Yeah.
we take a look, we decide what to archive once a year, I think that's where Gina was going with.
Yeah, that should be kind of a group discussion of, can we all agree that 10-year-old brainstorm can be archived, yeah.
Yep. So any other, we don't have to vote on that, do we? Thank you.
Actually, just one other point, it's probably in here, but like the debt schedule, would that be in here?
Could be.
So,
Capital plan.
yeah. capital
Yeah.
plan.
Yeah.
And I think you can just state the things, you don't have to worry about them being
I
like real
mean,
time,
stuff's
just,
in the
you know what I
budget,
mean,
but then
just as
people
long
have
as
to
you
know
have a
where
date,
to
like,
look in the
so.
budget, which is
Make
why
it
I was thinking
clear.
the scorecard.
Yeah, so I'll, kind of second that, you've already started, the ball's rolling, so, you know, no sense in stopping the momentum, so, again, great start, ladies, and, you know, I really, really appreciate the efforts.
One more thing, I do want to say that Jackie and Jane did allow us to look under the hood a little bit, and if you saw the Excel spreadsheet that they have, they are literally taking every single link from every single page on the Town of Reading website and linking it over, like the amount, so we're looking at like, oh, the Fincom page, which is this much, the amount of work they've done to make this new webpage, I just want to acknowledge it, it was eye-opening to me, so just shout out to them.
Great. Jackie, I don't know if you're gonna be able to get out of your house with all this. Your head's getting big here because we're giving you a lot of accolades. Again, couldn't.
Be modest.
Yeah, exactly. So that sounds great. So all right. So then, and I think this is kind of the next item is kind of tangentially related to you know, the website one is just discussing our Fincom email procedures, and I think this kind of came up a couple times as far as like when emails kind of come through. I think they come to both you and Sharon, Bob?
Just Sharon.
Yeah, oh, just Sharon. And so I think that was part of the discussion we wanted to be able to have as far as, is that, you know, how we wanted to be able to handle that as well, you know, as far as emails go.
So whether the general public should be able to email all of us, or whether we're comfortable having Sharon kind of throw out the spam and only forward the important things to us. Is that?
That's pretty much it. I mean, Sharon, like, you know, what you do today is you just, as you get them, then I think you're just forwarding them on to, you know, to chair and vice chair, correct?
Yes, correct.
I don't think there's a large volume from last time I looked.
It really isn't.
No.
There's not very much that comes in.
You should also be aware that the new website's going to be previewed probably at the second March meeting for the select board, and communication with boards and committees is a topic, a subtopic or whatever, so that, you know, how do we reach different board and committee members will be addressed that night, so you might want to send someone to listen in or whatever.
What was that, March?
22nd, I think.
Yeah, I think when we asked Jackie, they didn't have the bandwidth with the new website, or they weren't paying for individual
Right.
addresses for every board member, but they thought maybe that
But it
it's
could be
possible the
forwarded.
chairs of boards maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
and, I mean, on my personal, is I would like to be able to reach out to all appointed and elected officials, but those people, so on the VASC applications, folks have already, here's how I want you to contact me. So they've given their preferred contacts, and I think we have a responsibility to people to be able to be contacts. And I don't suggest that we post it on the website, but I think we need to be able to reach people. Actually, I'm gonna lose power. We're having trouble contacting a trails person right now who, you know, is maybe not able to do the trails anymore, and because we can't get a hold of them, and hopefully we can, we're gonna have a public hearing and throw them off. And it's gonna take a lot of time and energy, so
Yep.
there's a lot of good reasons for being able to reach out directly.
One method that's used, that I'll try to share with Fidel, some boards have a link like finance, like you do, and then it's forwarded to all members automatically. This isn't automatic, this is Sharon in between, but it can be changed. So historical has an email address called, I don't know, historical@ci.reading or whatever, and it just goes to all of their personal email accounts or whichever ones they prefer. So that's, I don't know about the new website, but that's traditionally been another way to do it. It's been a discussion. It's funny when you're staff and you have the discussion with a group like Fincom, and then they decide, and then you don't think to keep asking. So this was a discussion many years ago, and the
Yep.
finance committee said, do it this way. It's like, okay, but it's a discussion you should probably have every couple of years.
You're gonna
Yeah, my inclination now is to maybe table this agenda item
Yes.
and wait to see the discussion on March 22nd. I'd almost want our discussion to be informed by that discussion.
Yeah.
It sounds like that might be a better approach.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like will the new website be able to just say all the boards decide, well, at least the chair of our board is gonna be a contact. There's a bandwidth to create at least as many emails as there are boards.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not in
That's
favor
not-
of any more emails from me or anyone else if they don't want them, but I just want to be able to reach people. That's how we're going to collaborate better, so. but.
So is that different than,
Yeah, I can see
So is that-
RHCS.
yeah, so is
Yeah.
that different, like, are you just looking for a contact list internal? Like, that's not necessarily, but like, that's allows us to be able to contact, chair and vice chair, kind of.
Any member of any appointed committee.
Yeah, so,
Or
but so is that inside chair, inside the committees, or are you talking about it like from the public in?
Personally, I think the public should be able to reach any of us, but, I leave that open to discussion, but I will say when, the outside independent auditor came in and ranked the RMLD website, there wasn't any contact for any of the boards and commissioners and that, they got marked down for that, they're like, it's not transparent, people need to be reachable.
Yep.
So then we could decide how that's most economical, because it sounds like it's a lot of work and expense for having hundreds of emails.
So then, so am I safe to assume that there's, for each board and committee, there's a slightly different protocol? Like, so for us, it goes through sharing, but, and that makes sense, obviously, from,
I think there is, but it's probably disorganized and historical.
Yeah.
And it could use a fresh
Probably
look.
you're right.
yeah, okay. I mean, Gina, I think I'm fine, kind of making our final determination, but at least kind of maybe just take a moment if just for us to be in the room, do we have any issue with it as it's going today, where it kind of goes through Sharon to us? And just leaving that kind of open to Bob's point, leaving it open to discussion from that perspective.
Can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I don't want to hit Sharon with the bus, but I always worry about the hit by the bus phenomena. Anytime anything is going to one human being, I think ideally it should at least be more than one person. In the event that someone's on vacation or somebody is dealing with a family day, I don't think it should go to one person. And I hope you never get hit by a bus.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
I also think it'd be important when we have this discussion to have town council's input on it as well, because just in watching some of the recent, well, maybe not now so recent, pretty long-standing select board dealings on open meeting law issues, I'd want to make sure that what we're proposing is consistent with
Yep, that's
her
fair.
advice, or at least is done with an eye toward that compliance.
So, and then, Karen, on your 22nd meeting, is council part of that too, or?
No, I haven't even looked at that agenda yet. Is that when we're getting a deep
Yes.
review of the
Yep.
new
We'll take
website?
that.
Okay,
Yep.
so it's kind of like being put together,
Okay,
so.
gotcha.
Yeah, I think the conversation about email is complicated because there's a slew of I'll say this and I'll regret it. The importance of the different committees vary, right? I mean, and Fincom obviously is one of the most critical, right? So
You're just saying that because you're in the
I
room.
know.
so staff support.
You say that to all the boards.
Exactly.
So staff support to the different boards vary, right? I mean, I think it's hard to make a policy that applies to everyone.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? So I think in some ways and Chris Haley yesterday said primary boards, right? And I'm not sure what the term is and which one is in what bucket, but I think it's hard to apply a rule to everyone.
Yep, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, yeah, I mean, any other questions or comments on the email procedures?
Can we just make that an agenda item
Yeah.
after the 22nd?
Yeah, so we'll add that to whatever our meeting is after the 22nd. Bob, can I take this?
Yeah. You're gonna be posted for the 4 Wednesdays
Okay,
in March, whatever date. That might be meeting the 23rd.
yep.
So every Wednesday in March will be posted, because I know one of them is a candidate.
What are the dates? Do you have it in front of you for Wednesdays? I think there's 4 Wednesdays.
Yeah, I just put them on my calendar,
Okay.
so like June
And
9th, 16th.
so the first one is the school committee, but budget schools.
It's the second, the
Yep.
9th, the 16th, and the 23rd.
So the second is schools, the 9th is the town, the 16th is more town if you need it, warrant articles if you need it. You could theoretically wrap up all your March business on the 16th, and then the 23rd is kind of if you can't wrap it up on the 16th.
Gotcha.
And then there is deadlines for the written warrant that happen fairly soon after the 23rd. If you're going to put a written report, for instance, in, then, I don't know, Jackie will go up to bid the first week at the latest of the next month. In other words, if you tried to meet the week after the 23rd to do work for the town meeting warrant, it probably wouldn't fit.
Gotcha. Yes. Gotcha. Okay. Perfect. And then, yeah, so then that's 22nd. So that could be for the 23rd. Gotcha. Okay. All right. Cool. Are we good to move on to, are we good on that topic? Everyone, anyone else, everything else to add? All right, good. All right, so let's go on to the last one, which, the next one, actually, I'm sorry, is the free cash projections, and kind of, I kind of start a little bit about, kind of what, again, I mentioned this a little bit earlier. It's kind of, in my mind, kind of a looking at, kind of demystifying a little bit of, free cash. And, yes, it's, the free cash position is healthy, today, but, in a lot of, but it's, kind of very similar to what we've just kind of learned with water reserves. It's, it can quickly, be needed, and then when it's needed, then it's, it's not as much there for the, for the year and years after that. And I think just for, for clarity, kind of free cash, just for, and I'm sure everyone already knows this, but just for anyone else that might be watching, free cash is used annually, to support the budgets, and typically that's been in the, $2 million, $2.25 million, kind of level. That's been raised over the last, kind of few years because of the pandemic. And we, kind of raised it again this year, I think, as it related to, kind of allocating some things to the, to road repair, which, kind of given the recent plowing, it probably sounds like it's a good idea to have that in there. It's pretty prescient from our perspective. And, and then, so, Sharon, I'll kind of kick it over to you, but again, we kind of operated under, and this was, kind of with Bob and Gene and myself and Sharon, we're just kind of looking at different types of, kind of projections that are out there, and looking at, what typically happens if you're using a certain amount of money to be able, kind of in, outgoing fiscal years, making assumptions as far as what does regenerate. And then also, and then what happens over time. So some of this is, I think, is in the revised packet, but then Sharon's, kind of sharing her screen now too, so you can see it on the, there. And I think this is just this is scenario one, correct, Sharon?
Yes, so this is, so Gene had asked me to do 3 different, scenarios using different levels of regeneration, different levels of uses of free cash for each year, just to see when we would hit that 7%, when we would drop below. So this first one is the baseline projection. Let me just explain the spreadsheet a little bit, and I'll show you how to read it. So every year starts off with what was certified for free cash. And then when you see favorable variance from operations, that is our regeneration for both revenue and expense, and anything that might have been released that was held from the prior year. Say we had negative balances that weren't collected by, is it September 30th? They hold, if we can collect on grants, they'll hold money. It's almost as if you borrow from the general fund. So the combination of regeneration from revenues, expenses, and that sort of thing would be what you'd see in this favorable variance area. And then you see the uses of free cash when we used it, and then you get down to what the end free cash was for the year, and then that comes forward to your next year, what you started the year with. Down below, I added some information related to our stabilization and our Fincom reserves, because those are also considered reserves, just to give us a look at what is our total reserves. Free cash doesn't make up all of it. So, for instance, in fiscal 21, we ended the year with $17.7 million in free cash, but we also had $1.7 million in stabilization funds and $200,000 in Fincom reserves. So we really had closer to $19.6 million of total reserves. So the other thing I added to the spreadsheet that hadn't been there prior is just giving you an idea of what that 7% limit looks like by just taking what our revenue projections are and increasing it by 3% each year, and what that would be. So for fiscal 21, it would be about $7.2 million. So we had $12 million in addition to what our reserve policy says we should. So that being how you read this and exactly what kind of information I'm providing you, you can see that all the years going forward are projected, 2022 for 10 years out. And so for this projection, we did $2 million of regeneration through 2025, then dropping to $1,750,000 in 2026, and then dropping regeneration down to $1.5 million for the remainder of the years. And then we use the same amount of free cash that we are going to use for fiscal 23 going forward. And in this scenario, when would we drop below? So when you see the red, that's when we would drop below the 7%. So 2029, we would be in a deficit. So essentially 2028 would be the only year that we'd be okay. And if we tried to use that same amount, we would drop below our 7% if things played out exactly as you see here. And the numbers get drastically bigger as you go through to 2031. The second analysis that I was asked to do is the same as the baseline projection, but add $1 million in 2024.
Hey, Sharon.
So for 20,
Hey,
yes?
just before you go on to the next one, just kind of a quick question on my end. I know that, again, our reserve policy is, kind of having it at 7%. Is there a different number, and I can't believe I'm just remembering this now, I didn't ask you this in any of the other correspondence that we had, but what is the number that is looked at from like the ratings agencies? Is that a different kind of percentage and number? I had a feeling that was closer to 10% or something higher, but
I feel like it is. I think it's more like 10%. I mean, I think that once you're over 10%, I think they consider you pretty secure. Bond rating agencies really want to see a lot of reserves in place because that tells them that you're stable. So 7% is a good percentage, but I do think that in most cases they're looking for over 10% to make you a AAA bond rating. So.
Yeah, good.
Last time we had a ratings call, I was really surprised if they said 10 to 12 at a minimum. It's like, who can afford that?
I actually didn't know that.
Yeah, I was
thank you
really
for that.
surprised. That was
Yeah, I don't know.
best fall.
Yeah, that came up in one of our conversations, and it stuck with me. So, yeah, thanks. Sorry for
It
interrupting.
makes you wonder if our reserve limit should be 10% because we don't want to lose our AAA bond rating. But anyhow, moving on to the second one, it's the same exact projection, except all I've changed is on 2024, I've added $1 million for one-time capital use and see how that changes things. So you see that in 2028 now we're going negative, so really 2027 would be the only year that we wouldn't drop below, and then the next year we would. And we could drop below, it's an internal reserve policy, but it's probably not a good practice, obviously, so we want to be aware that our choices could lead us here. And then in analysis 3, same exact spreadsheet, except we've changed out, it did $1 million extra starting in 2024 of the remainder of the 10 years. And of course, that's going to yield us, a bigger negative sooner, I believe. This one doesn't look. I don't know why this doesn't look the same as the other one. 2028, we see that that's the problem area. That's not an exact copy. I would expect that this number would be negative sooner, so that's kind of strange.
No, I think, I don't know, I think on the one you had before, I think you had it where it went to 2026, I thought.
Yeah, my
Sharon,
dispersion isn't the right one, I guess.
Sharon, are the regeneration numbers the same? They might drop to 1 million later in the earlier analysis.
No, I don't. I think everything was the same except for that. So maybe I've got a positive number in here or something. Maybe I've changed something.
She's ready.
When I was working from home, I had to save this on my computer because I kept getting kicked off of VPN. So this might not be the right version. So let me look.
Yeah, I thought it was 2026 when, you know, the ones that we were sharing before, that it was, that it,
Interesting.
and in this, and I think in this, you know, this is 3 scenarios. The last version had, what was it, 8, 10 different scenarios. We were kind of, you know, we kind of were, you know, I was.
Let me just make another copy just to satisfy myself, because I don't want to figure out what changed.
Yeah, I was very, I kind of geeked out with this stuff. This was very fascinating to me. I really enjoyed it. I love spreadsheets. But that's, you know, that's just me in my spare time. But it was.
We moved it in 2024, right, to 1 million up.
Yep.
That's right, Sharon.
It looks like it's not giving me the same results as I would expect.
Can you scroll down, Cheryl? Can you scroll? There you go.
There you go.
There it is.
That's the number you're looking at.
There we go.
Oh, I was looking at
Yeah.
above, so I must have been right to begin with. Sorry
Yeah,
about
you were
that.
right.
I've got you guys, all you guys on the side here, so I'm struggling to see the side of my screen. I wonder where I can move you so I can even see.
That's the one.
Yep, that's the right one. Yep.
That's the one, yeah, okay. So you can see that it moves,
That's
26.
Oops, now it is.
yeah, 26 is the last year. I wonder if it was the same and I just hadn't scrolled down enough. Yes, you're right. I just hadn't scrolled down enough. The split screen had me messed up. So yeah, 2026 is the last time that we would be above our 7% if we went that direction and did 3,750,000 every year from fiscal 24 going forward.
And all those other revenue and regeneration assumptions stay the same.
Exactly. You know,
Sorry.
and yeah, and so in that, to that point, Karen, that was one of the things, you know, again, we had an earlier version of this where we were kind of like playing around with, and there was a lot of, you know, kind of a good discussion with Sharon as far as, okay, well, what's the right regeneration? What's the right, you know, and not to be too conservative or too, kind of, kind of freewheeling with, with that. It was trying to find something that's kind of within our normal discipline, as far as, what we would want to be able to expect, and not to be, kind of overly ambitious, saying, okay, well, we always do X. Let's project that. Let's take, kind of take a little bit more of a haircut and be, kind of conservative as far as how you're looking at it. And I think in those types of scenarios, that at least kind of triangulates yourself into a position where you're saying, well, given that, it's 2026, and that's, and that's a good date to kind of circle, because I think, in this scenario, you're looking at using an extra $1 million every year to, and whether that's, a one-time or, kind of something that supports the, increases with the support of the budget, and it gets to some of the other things we were talking about, whether that's full-day kindergarten, whether that's, it's all, kind of, quote unquote, kind of doable in the short term. It's just, it's eye-opening what it looks like, how it draws something back from really 2029 into 2026, if you look at it from that perspective. And I think that's the one main thing we want to talk about. Go ahead, Mark.
So I do have a question. So the revenue, increasing by 3%, and we're sort of arbitrarily dropping the regeneration. But I'm just thinking, the impact of inflation now on the budgets, and, we sort of could be getting to a position where the regeneration goes to zero. At 7.5% inflation right now, it's almost double what we're getting from just the 3%. So I'm just a little concerned there that this could be really aggressive and not conservative. If we took a look at like, the 6 million regeneration, like what part of that is can we really count on, because if you scroll back up a little, Sharon, I mean, the 2 million, if that's zero, or if it goes way down because of inflation, and we're gonna see salary increases, we might be kidding ourselves that might not be real to be counted.
Well, I mean, Mark, that was one of the discussions that we had, in looking at this, because, and it was probably a little bit less on the regeneration, but even like looking at, kind of the supporting the budget, like if, because there's a couple variables there, and Bob, kind of shared one of these already, is that if state aid comes in a little bit lower, then that's more that we have to be able to kind of use. We're going to have to make up that difference, and so that could be something. Again, whatever cost, as it relates to, it's those two pieces, kind of play off of each other. Your costs go up, there's less that and you end up having to use. There's less that you can regenerate on the back end too. They end up playing off each other to that degree too.
I'm actually really glad you pointed that out. I'm actually going to ask Sharon to explain this because she'll explain it better than me. But Sharon, if you could just explain a little bit why it would be very unwise to use the $6 million. My understanding is FY21 was a very unique year fiscally.
Yeah, it was definitely a unique year. That was one of our larger regeneration years, and it had to do with the pandemic. We had a lot of open positions. We had, a lot of money that just wasn't spent because of the pandemic, because we had, grants to pay for things that we thought we would have to pay within our budget. So, related to COVID-related stuff. So we had I could go into the details and look and see, but there was a lot of salary return on regeneration last year. And also part of this number was when the grant for the CARES grant came in fiscal 21, anything that went to fiscal 20 general fund, we actually left a lot of things in the general fund, especially in the school area, because it was going to affect their net school spending if we moved it to the grant, because we had, at that time, it was the end of fiscal 20 when the pandemic started. We started to spend a lot of money on COVID stuff, not knowing we were going to have grant funds. And so it was going to affect net school spending, so a discussion had taken place with the auditors to leave those expenses in the general fund, and when we got the money from CARES, putting it in the general fund and have it be a boost to free cash. And so that's also within that $6 million. It's like $900,000 of that is CARES money. So it would not be wise to use the $6 million. It's not typical to see a $6 million regeneration year. It's, the only other year that I saw that kind of number was when we had the override fiscal 19, because the override happened and, you budget everybody at, for the whole year, and we have, it ended up being that the override caused us to have a very big regeneration year, but the next year it went back down to the norm. So I wouldn't advise going to a $6 million number. That would be very aggressive. We tend to go on $1 million or $1.5 million when I'm usually showing these types of charts, just to be very conservative. But we have had very high regeneration numbers over the last 10 years. The first 5 years I was here, I'd say we were averaging somewhere in that $2.4 to $3 million. And over the last 5 years, we've been creeping closer to $4 million as an average for regeneration. So, but I'd be concerned for the same reasons, that we won't be seeing these numbers be this high. I think they're doable if things continue on the way that they've been. But the unknown with all the inflation, it is hard to know. Are we going to see numbers like this in the future? I'm hoping we will. It's hard to say.
So I think that's that's the context too. Like the 2 and taking it even lower. That's already taking a kind of a really good haircut from what we've seen historically. Go on.
It's almost like Mark read my budget message for the budget for next week, but I kind of asked you all to keep your eye on inflation. It's the biggest single enemy that can happen to municipal government. If you just think of it conceptually, think of the 5% capital and assume that costs are going up at some high rate, whatever it is, 5-10% a year. You're just going to be doing less and less capital every year. You know, if you borrowed money, that stays the same. But if you're trying to procure stuff and it's going up in price, you just have to do less of it because it's going to be growing faster than your revenues, whatever they are. Translated to the rest of the 95% of the budget, some of them are fixed costs that don't go up much, debt service. But some of them, like benefits and salaries, will start to track inflation, but your revenues won't. And it can really, really squeeze you fast if it gets into if we were really in a 7.5% inflation era for 3 years, free cash is gone. And unless you start cutting budgets, that's your other option is, just like capital, we can't do as much of it. We can't spend as much on our operating budgets.
Yep.
Because it's becoming more expensive than our revenues allow it. So that's a real potential enemy, you know, of the way Prop 2.5 works. Since Prop 2.5 came in, there hasn't been much inflation. It's just kind of a dumb luck thing, I think. If Prop 2.5
Sounds like
were
you're telling
indexed,
us to save our
Well-
save our free cash for supplementing budgets in future years, so we don't have to cut necessary services.
I don't know, but if you're gonna see inflation and the same thing costs much more, and your revenues are coming in, you know, private organizations just raise their prices. You can't do that.
Yep.
And your debt service will keep going up too, right? Because rates are gonna go up,
Eventually, mhm.
right? And then that's gonna flow through here because we'll be paying more if you wanna borrow the same, right? So,
Yeah, and, you know, you'd like to pass along some of your costs, but you really can't pass along very many. Maybe the state aid will go up, because they're seeing inflation also. They don't have a cap, they have taxes, that's not a big percent of their income.
I just want to tag on what you were just saying. Another thing to keep in mind about a potentially increasing interest rate environment is the importance Sharon said about keeping the AAA bond rating. When interest rates are 1 or 2%, it's nice to have a AAA bond rating, but interest rates are super low. If inflation goes up and interest rates go up accordingly, having that AAA bond rating and being able to borrow at a lower cost is actually going to, I think, be more meaningful for the budget. I think we may be heading into an environment where protecting the AAA bond rating is more important than it maybe has been historically.
And for the capital plan, especially in the enterprise funds, you know, we've had a look at it, and I've had to increase the assumed costs for stuff for 4 years and further out by like 20-25%. So sewer stations, just way more expensive. And then in terms of future interest rates, it's still a little mild, but it just bumped it up from 3 to 4%.
Yeah, that's pretty.
But again, it's just, you end up doing less.
Yep.
Or you do it slower.
So Sharon, I certainly agree that, understand what you're saying about the $6 million regeneration, that's definitely an outlier. But I think you just said that before the pandemic, the numbers on regeneration were closer to $3 to $4 million per year. So I wonder, you know, when you look at the projections of $2 million and then decreasing, is that the right thing to do? Because if you put that back up to $3 million for a couple of years and then 2.75, 2.5, you know, that's kind of exactly offsets the $1 million extra that we were talking about putting into the operating budget, right? And then we'd have, you know, so we have this baseline, right? And you say, well, okay, from the baseline, add $1 million to the free cash that we're using every year, but also change it to $1 million more in regeneration from the previous year, and that balances right out.
Yeah, but the concern is that the regeneration may not continue to perform the way it has been. So that's, I think, the reason we're trying to be more conservative. I think that these were just kind of some examples of what it would look like with, you know, the numbers declining in the end. You could do some scenarios where you see it, you know, going up and then coming back down. But it does show that we're moving closer to running out of free cash if we start using large numbers every year to support the operating budget, I think is the point. Especially if regeneration doesn't continue the way it's been. And it could very well continue the way it is. It's just hard to know. I mean, we always have reasons for our regeneration, and some of it is one-time items. Some things are things that could reoccur and other things aren't, and it's always surprising to us how much regeneration we have and where it comes from.
Go ahead, Mark, yeah.
So, you know, we might wanna look also at some of the capital projects, you know, if rates are lower now, should we be accelerating some of those so that costs will be lower now with some of the debt service on some of the schools coming off? You know, is it cheaper to do some of those now and not look at free cash to be funding those? And, you know, kind of putting off using some of the free cash for that because we might need it for operating reasons in a couple of years. So it could be smarter to go do that capital, accelerate that now and fund it through bonds at lower rates that we won't see in 2 or 3
Or pay
years.
cash and don't pay interest.
Yeah.
Take a slug of money. Here you go, do this project one time. Trouble is, right now, the markets are in such dislocation, it's hard to do capital. It's getting harder. But-
I mean, you can't get pipe, you know, and the engineers are busy, so to do a lot of work right now, you know, we're gonna join the party, I guess. Yeah, and our materials are gonna get stuck in, you know, in the bridge in Canada, right? I mean, it's complicated.
But I think there's some things we're looking at, like the field house, like I don't know if
Yeah.
that, you know, might be worth looking at, what are
Yeah.
what are the projects, and, you know, the debt service would be cheaper now, so it'd be better to do that now than delay, you know, in 2 or 3 years when the rates could be double. They're gonna go up, I mean, the inflation's not going away tomorrow, so might wanna look at it that way and save this free cash, we might need it for operating costs. You know, if that, you know, if the regeneration goes to 0 or negative, and we, you know, probably don't want to do a 2.5 override, so I think we're in a period now where you gotta kind of wait and see what's gonna happen on that front, but there are things we could do as a town now that we would do anyways, that could be cheaper to do now.
Is there a way within the capital budget, and I don't know, maybe whether this is Joe Huggins or, you know, Fidel too, because this is your area of expertise, to project which of the capital projects are less likely to be affected by supply chain issues versus other projects? Like, some might be, yes, we have to get pipe or conduits or different things, but it's a lot of labor, which we presume it might be easier to depend on than, you know, semiconductor chips, not that we're doing that, but I'm just throwing an extreme example. Do we have an idea of projects that are much, not only more shovel-ready, but we're likely to be able to get the supplies without a delay?
The reason that's really complicated is, all it takes is a little bit of stuff you need for a project to not be available, and you can't do the whole thing. So the Parker roof has been held up by a year now. It was gonna be done next summer. There was some very minor materials that were needed. You can't do the roof without it. They couldn't get it. The lead time was 18 months. And since they have to schedule in the summer, they pushed it out a year.
Right, I'm thinking like the high school turf, where they were saying at the school committee meeting that the turf manufacturers in Texas were, some of them were, we don't know who's gonna do the bid, but some of them had been affected by the winter weather last year, and they had 18-month lead times, and they want this project done by the end of August. But it all depends on how fast, you know, so that could go in.
It's getting harder to do capital. I mean, I don't mean even pay for it, it's just getting harder to do it. I certainly take all your points, Mark, it's just, it's getting harder to execute. And then, you know, any organization has bandwidth. So you can't just automatically do 10 times as many things because you can afford.
Yeah, no, I agree with looking at what projects and what can be done. You know, if there's something that can be done now.
I think that's a good exercise.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if they're all in the same boat, I guess.
Well, you know, call in the experts and talk to them and just see. I just know that there's, again, little flies in the ointment cause a big problem, something you couldn't have expected. You know, they were thinking October, November of laying in a lot of extra, not a lot, but some extra water main pipeline because it's getting harder to find. So when you have a water main break, well, we can't find any pipe, if you can imagine that. So I don't know if they have, but they had money and they were going to do that. It's like, really? Is this really what we've become?
It's like going to the supermarket and scoffing up.
Taking all the stuff off the shelves, yeah, exactly.
And only now it's supplies for public construction.
And there's so much federal money around that a lot more people are trying to spend money.
Yep.
I think it'd be a really good exercise for you to go through in terms of thinking, you know, kind of like what has happened, not on purpose in water. There's been problems, so they had to use reserves to fix it. You know, not by choice, but you have the choice to say, well, what kind of things could we do that are one-time costs that we have, you know, reserves for, that would be beneficial to just get it done. I think that's a really good idea.
I think it's something ARPA can think of too.
It's a great segue, thank you. I just wanted to say that we did speak at the select board meeting about taking a look at, now that we have a new town manager, taking a look at the town manager goals we had established for this year. And we had talked about, you know, specifically infrastructure, because to this very point, there's an amazing opportunity for us to go and get more federal funds from the state. We want to put resources into that, specifically water, sewer, infrastructure, electric buses. I mean, literally, Senators Warren and Markey are like, come and get it. So, you know, that's a decision. We have to decide to invest the human capital to go in and get that, but that could be a huge help in allaying some of this uncertainty. Assuming we can do the projects once we win the grants.
Right.
Go, Jean.
So I think it's important, for me, it's important not to get too hung up on 2029 versus 2030 versus 2031. Like they're projections. Nobody can tell you what free cash for generation in 2028 is going to be, right? They're projections. For me, what was really helpful about this exercise was really seeing how different uses of free cash impact that year, the year when we have a problem. So I feel like on the path we're currently on, we can reasonably assume that we have many years runway to continue supporting operating budgets and maintain level services. In the event that we want to use one-time money, I think we need to be careful because it pushes that year closer. But I do think there's really good uses for free cash, and the one that comes to mind is the Meadowbrook land that came up, where it isn't in the capital plan, there's no money in the budget for it. Do you really want to push out needed infrastructure repairs, or do we have money in the savings account to just buy that incredible asset that was really beneficial to the town? So I think there is an argument to use free cash for one-time purposes, but I think they need to, in my mind, they need to be those kind of one-off, unexpected, came out of nowhere opportunities. Generally speaking, we put 5% of our budget to capital and debt, so we should really be handling it within that, generally speaking. And what this exercise really showed me is when you increase the operating budgets, you cause two problems. You bring that year in, right? You hit the cliff sooner, but you also make the cliff bigger. So now you're not only making cuts sooner, but they're bigger cuts. So for me, it was in many ways very validating of the approach we've had for many years.
Okay.
Make some excellent points. Sharon, thank you for doing this. This is great, and I see that you have the revenue projections in here as well, so that we can see, you know, this $2 million regeneration and getting lowered, becoming a smaller percentage of the actual budget. And so for me, though, I have a hard time worrying about those projections beyond a couple of years. And but I think it's great that you pointed out that we should recognize, to Jeff's point, that these are very conservative because we don't know what, you know, life is actually gonna happen. But I don't, there's no immediate cliff, which this group would know before then anyway. But I hate to, I just can't spend a lot of time worrying about 2030 when the projections are just, they're conservative and they're too far out and we don't know what's gonna bring us. But I would love to, could I ask a quick question? When the bond agencies, so last night we talked about stabilization funds, we talked about revolving funds for permits, which is like up to $1 million, and it's more than sufficient. And then, so it would be nice to be able to get an idea of what kind of funds we have that could potentially use to shore up free cash, support the operating budget, and if the rating agencies are looking at 7%, or they'd rather see 10%. So if it's $7 million plus that stabilization fund, which I'm not really sure what that's for, like, are we good? We're still good. There's still like excess, as Sharon has identified after that we can use for operating or one-time projects.
Now, the stabilization fund, I think the first override, not the one we had back in 2019, but the one prior to that. That's where that money came from. We've just never moved anything out of there, but it is considered reserves. But you do need a two-thirds vote to get it out of there. So stabilizations are a different vote at town meeting to utilize. That's the only real difference.
Okay, so it's really the 7% plus that, approaching 2 million is really the reserves that we've got all the time, right? Am I understanding that?
You mean the 2 million is the regeneration that we're expecting each year?
No, I think I heard you say that we've never touched that balance. It's been there for a long time.
Oh, yes, the 1.7 million is,
Okay.
It's growing just by interest earnings, and we haven't put anything in there in a long time either. It's
So-
just interest.
So as far as if bond ratings are looking at our piggy banks, are they gonna look at that stabilization balance and count that as part of our 10% that they'd like to see?
Yes.
Okay, so that's, without even doing anything, there's always $2 million sitting there that we've never touched, that's always gonna be there. So that makes me feel a little better, because it doesn't take that much more to get to somewhere between 7 and 10%. And, not that the ratings agencies are the be-all, end-all everything, but, I have always taken a conservative approach, and I understand life is unexpected. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the committee? So where do we want to take, again, as a takeaway from this, I think the idea of looking at, kind of projects is a good one, but, is there other types of, things the committee wants to be able to see? Just kind of open it up, from that perspective, or, kind of where do we kind of go, thoughts on where do we go from here, with this? I mean, obviously it was, I think it's important to be able to kind of look at just, again, educating ourselves as far as what happens with free cash and what's, what affects it, but, do we park it and leave it here? Is there some other things that we want to be able to do and look at? Interested in hearing folks' thoughts. Go ahead, Jackie.
Not that past needs to be, the way we've, always done it needs to be the way we do it now, but in the past, how has Fincom used or opined on this information, if at all?
Go ahead, Jean.
I would say in our annual budget guidance, and I'll look a little bit to Bob, I would say that every October we give guidance about how much free cash to use to stabilize the school and municipal budgets. And I feel like this work should at a minimum be reviewed over the summer before we make those recommendations. And they should certainly be reviewed annually, just to everyone's point. What really did happen with regeneration? What do we expect in the future? But for me, this is most useful in October when we give guidance on how much free cash to use in the operating budget. I'm not sure we really do much else with it. The only other example would be the Meadowbrook land. Some incredible opportunity hits the town. It's going to be an unexpected cost. It's in a price range where we can easily afford it within free cash. It's not the capital plan. We don't want to push off necessary infrastructure. That would be the only other time I could think of where it would come up, would be, hey, we have this incredible opportunity. The select board has expressed interest in it, is free cash a reasonable support for this? You'd want to look at this to say, can we afford fill in the blank amount of money, and what does that do? I think those would be, I'll defer to you, but those would be the two times I can think of.
You recall the high school litigation where the town meeting spent some free cash and then borrowed money. So, and if there had been 18 million of free cash, I don't think you had to borrow anything.
Yep.
So just unexpected things come along.
That's the opposite of Meadowbrook. Meadowbrook was like a positive surprise. That is the, wow, that was the negative surprise. But you're right, an unexpected expense.
Yeah.
It's a perfect example.
So you ended up, taking, if I recall correctly, it was a $6 million settlement. We took 2 out of free cash and borrowed the rest.
I don't remember you said 6, I remember. I don't remember the ratio, but there is still debt out there that's almost paid off.
Yeah. I think that was, my recollection, maybe you can correct me, Sharon, but that was the only year where free cash decreased in the past decade.
I can show you that. Let's see if we can find
She can show it.
It was 2016, 17, something.
No, it's not letting me
Build
remember.
around spreadsheets, go back to
Mm,
the 1700s.
yes, that's right, exactly.
It was doing the same thing on my computer.
You
Sharon.
can't do it.
No.
Let me see if I can hide some rows so I can see.
There you go. Smart.
Almost.
Wicked smart.
Is that one there, maybe?
So it's 2016.
2016 was when we announced the settlement, right before that override.
It's right, 2017 is
Oh, there it is.
when we used it at November town meeting, 2,196,000, so that must be 2 million for the settlement and something else was there as well. Because you see it goes, it's the only time I can remember free cash going down, by any number really. This was like 800,000 or 750,000 going down. It went from 9.2 to 8.5. Every other year you see it going up.
Good memory, Jeff.
Very good.
I mean, I just remembered, and I really appreciate the conservative budget that we're doing, that we don't have these difficult discussions like, what are we gonna do with inflation? But I look at it too and I say, we have this free cash that keeps growing and growing and growing, and we say, oh, we can only spend that on one-time things, because I understand, that when you take $1 million and say, okay, we're gonna move that for operating, well, it's every year and it increases, and it's difficult to do that, but then we end up with this large balance in free cash, and it's just hard to say, hey, we haven't done kindergarten, which we could have done years ago. If we had known what free cash regeneration was gonna be, we could have done pre-kindergarten already, because we have, something around $10 million above our guidance, which was raised from 5% to 7% within my memory, and things. So, I struggle with the large balance that's in there, and that, there are things that we haven't done as a town because we've been so conservative with how we spent it.
Yeah, either one of you, go ahead. Go ahead, Jim.
I think that's really fair, and I think the question is, do you want to spend it earlier and have it not last as long, or do you want to spend it more slowly over time and have it last longer? Because to your point, yeah, we could afford publicly funded full-day kindergarten in FY25, and in FY27 we have a $4 million hole in our budget. So you're right that we could have afforded it in the past, we can afford it now, but we can't sustain it. So that's sort of where I land on that. Anything with the operating budget is, if you can't afford to, you got to decide, are you trying to accomplish something over a year or 2 or 4, or are you trying to accomplish something forever? Because however many years it lasts, when it's free cash, there is an end point to it. And then you really do have to have a plan for what you're going to do then, is my response to that. But I hear the concern, I really do.
I basically the same comment. It bothers me that we're not using the money for services in some ways, but if your fundamental revenue versus cost picture suggests the only way you can take on those costs is you have to keep spending savings, that just becomes difficult. Because you can't, if it was revenue, then that's great, but if it's free cash, that's not revenue, it's not the same thing. And as to Gene's point, and this is a discussion I remember having with Pat Scatini, do you put it in a service that has a finite life? And his answer was yes, and mine was no. And that's, he said, if I can help 3 years of education, I do it.
Right.
And then I don't do it in the 4th year, and that's a philosophical discussion.
Go ahead. Marianne, sorry.
And just, I'm gonna add to that and then ask a different question. I mean, right away, we gave different guidance this year that the school budget already went up, something like 800K, even without full day K. They've added, I counted 8 different counselor positions and some other positions, and some of it, because they've increased the Metco enrollments, so some of it's gonna come out of that grant. But the schools are already doing a lot of growth, even without the full day K, that the operating budget is gonna have to support. I know that we have new growth of almost $1 million from all the housing downtown that's still subject to whatever our split is. I think the school committee might be thinking, oh, can new growth be dedicated to full day kindergarten? If we know that's continuous, that might be a way. But leading to the schools that, this is a slightly different segue. I thought we had heard in the school information that we would hear from MSBA by mid to late February. Is that a decision they tell?
First week of March.
First week of March. So is that a decision that is told to the superintendent or the town manager? How does the town get that information?
Probably the superintendent.
I see. Because that's gonna be a humongous, when we say things are going off that, depending on what that outcome is, still wanna do that project. I mean, that's gonna be, you know what new school construction's gonna be, how much do you think a new Killam would be? Your estimate would be
Don't
better
say
than
it,
mine.
don't say it.
Let's put it this way.
No, no.
I can say
Yeah.
it because I don't.
Who knows? Right.
Like $100 million, right?
Yep.
Who knows?
Yeah, so.
Suffice to say, free cash won't cover it.
No, but I mean, people, when people see debt exclusions, they're not gonna have an appetite for overrides in addition, I think. And so we have to see, you know, stretching the free cash to avoid operating overrides. I like that, just because I know the other big chunks are coming. Anyway, we'll know the answer to that in a couple of weeks, I guess.
Cool, well, thanks everybody for the feedback. Sharon, thanks again for doing all this. I think, you know, the comments from Jackie and Jean, as far as, you know, the, you know, kind of periodicity that we kind of come back to revisit this, I think is, and knowing that this is there, I think, again, you know, just rewinding to Meadowbrook, you know, in like, you know, kind of replaying that in my mind. I'm like, oh, well, maybe if, you know, we had some of this, you know, like if that thought process had come through, maybe that would have, you know, kind of led to a, you know, kind of a different, I mean, I've been in the same decision, but it might have been, you know, kind of approached a little bit differently. So I think it's kind of nice to be able to know that.
Can I say that a little bit of a different way?
Sure, probably better too.
No.
Short,
No,
sir.
but
Yeah.
as we've been thinking about this, I keep thinking about Meadowbrook, and at the time I said it, and I'll say it again, like, how lucky are we as a town that we were in a position to take that opportunity? How lucky were we to be able to say, yes, it is an unusual opportunity, it's a huge asset to the town, we can afford to do that. I worry a little bit that if we were further along in that trajectory, if it were 25, 26 when that opportunity came up and we were looking at the cliff, are we still so comfortable spending $500,000 on that opportunity? So that's sort of another thing in the back of my mind, is that the more cushion you have over that 7%, the more ability we have to take those opportunities. So
Yep.
maybe that's what it is.
I'm just less worried than you are. We're paying $300,000 for that lot. We're not even paying $450 for it. And we spent $750 on the Zani property like years ago with lower cash balances. So I'm just not feeling as, I hear where you're coming from. I'm definitely not that same space.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks everybody. You know, I thought again, and thank you so much, Sharon, for doing all this. And I think, you know, I think it's a great, you know, kind of education, and we just got to figure out ways to be able to make sure that we're, you know, kind of evangelizing that to the rest of the boards and committees, especially when they're talking about the, you know, the use of free cash. And again, I think you're talking about inflation, you talk about other costs. I think that's, you know, those are important things to say, that it's not as always as rosy as, you know, it's kind of perceived to be. All right, so we're almost done.
Thanks.
Yeah, so this one, we added this one in late, and we're, you know, kind of, so, I'll kind of just, I had a couple things I wanted to be able to say, and I promise it won't be too long. Bob, it's been an absolute pleasure.
That part of the
Yeah, we're at that part of the meeting, you know.
Where's the cake?
Yeah, where's the cake? Where's the cake?
Cake, it's really good.
Yeah, it's, I can say it's been an absolute pleasure to work with you over the past few years, and again, under, you know, kind of extreme circumstances. You know, we talked about our, you know, kind of our charge, you know, as Fincom is to, you know, to kind of, to educate ourselves and to recommend to town meeting. And as part of that, I know I do, and I think all of us do, we've relied on you, you know, as a massive crutch for, you know, lots of different questions, the same questions, probably repeatedly, and I can honestly say that you've made that process as enjoyable as it can be. It's always with humor, and it's always informative. your door is always, your door. Not many people have been in here, but your door's been has been open, and there hasn't been a question that's been off limits. And so Gina and I've kind of talked about this, but I learned kind of a mantra kind of early in my career, and it's it's to leave something better than you found it. And so I've tried to do that in my business. I've tried to do that in my personal life. Tried to do that with my volunteerism. The highest praise that I can give you, Bob, is that you've done that with our town.
Thank you.
And I just don't think that there's not enough ways to say thank you. And so we wish you the happiest of retirements, and I hope you enjoy it. Again, we've talked about this, or it's been talked about in others. We know where you started, though, Bob, and we won't. And I heard the story last night.
Yeah.
We won't make you work on the landfill project first. If it ever kind of comes back, there's always a spot here, and within Fincom, and again. I know you won't be a stranger, but again, I actually kind of mean it. As far as Fincom goes. So again, so we got you a little something, and just
My
as
very own box.
It's your very own box.
It's a really nice one.
It's a really nice box.
Isn't that nice of you?
So it's your own.
My own R.
Your
Robert.
own R for Robert, R for Reading, but your own. It's your own.
Nice.
It's your own piggy bank. It's
Yeah,
it's for our rainy day fund. It says on the back, it's our rainy day fund. So yeah, so
I'll try to put 18 million.
and there you go. So yeah, we didn't put anything like break glass, in case of emergency, but that's kind of kind of. So so again, thank you so much, Bob, for for all of it.
Should I give a speech?
You don't need to at all, but
My only comment is be careful what you volunteer for.
that's right.
It's been a pleasure. The finance committee meetings are always highly enjoyable, and especially since Ed has become chair. More unpredictable.
Definitely more unpredictable. So again,
I
so
think you're at an interesting time where you're definitely working from a position of strength, and you have to appreciate that and remember that. But you do have challenges ahead. There's always challenges. 2 years ago, none of us could have imagined the pandemic, and we made it through as best we can. Life just has those things.
exactly. Yeah, I mean, and it does put all this in perspective too. Everything that we're doing, kind of from this perspective, it's you kind of overlay, world events like that. It's just it's completely different. So, so I'm thrilled that we were able to kind of squeeze this in, and to be honest, like the rest of the agenda, I've been just sleepwalking through. I've been waiting for this, for that one, and I'm really glad that we were able to do it, and for all the stuff that you've done, Bob, and Fidel, thrilled that and again, this is Bob's last, your first FinCom meeting, and I'm so looking forward to having you, kind of participate, and looking forward to working with you. You've been so gracious already with your time. You've met with me, met with others, kind of on the side. And so, again, I'm really excited, for what's in store for us. So thank you.
Yeah, no, I said it last night as well. I mean, Bob has been incredible in the transition, and in the fact that he's handing me a finished budget. He's been answering all kinds of questions like, where's the bathroom?
Right, sure. Absolutely.
How often you can use it.
That's right, exactly.
Incredible mentor. I mean, in the short time that I've been in Reading, I mean, to walk into these problems, right? I mean, they're good problems to have.
Yep.
Very good problems to have.
I think what Fidel will bring to you that I don't is a comment from earlier about visual. I think he's going to bridge the gap to communicate better with the residents in a visual way. I'm not really that much of a visual person. When I try to put things in the budget that are visual, people say, take that out. But he'll do it in a much easier way to communicate with people. And I think that's, you know, that's one of your unspoken missions is it's one thing for you to talk in this room and understand each other. It's quite another thing to talk to the rest of the community. And I think that's where he'll be your strongest ally.
That's great.
What I'm already sensing though is you have a very dry sense of humor, and I'm hearing a lot of little asides. He's got a great sense of humor. We need that in this
We need
time.
humor.
Yeah.
We need
Sometimes
it.
people take each other too seriously.
Exactly.
And it's great to have someone at the helm who we can continue the tradition.
That's great.
I will try.
All right, so then now we're on to the last item from minutes from the 13th, right?
I move to approve the FinCom meeting minutes dated January 13th, 2022.
Second.
Thanks, Mary Ann.
So, as I'm glancing at this, there was the $80,000 for the COVID testing, and there was some question as to whether that was gonna get backfilled by, pulled out of ARPA. Was that decision made?
Yes.
So,
Yep, it was. Yeah, that was made on the first.
Yep.
We
Go ahead.
voted, we allocated 250,000, if I remember
Yep.
correctly, to ARPA
Yep.
for that purpose.
from ARPA for that purpose.
Yeah, so it covered that and then gave extra cushion. Yep,
Yeah.
yeah, from ARPA to be able to do that. So yeah, so
Mark
that.
wanted 500, but they won't.
Yeah, exactly. They talked him down. They talked him down. It was a healthy negotiation.
Just a quick technical question on that. So that just becomes a journal entry, so we are effectively back to having a $200,000 reserve fund.
Or just tell
Does
them you
anything
have
need to
vote
happen
it.
with that, or does that
That's
just
a
happen
that's a
automatically?
sharing question.
Yeah, it is a sharing question.
So technically, we would still need to at town meeting, because I had already done the journal entry for what you voted. So we would have to reimburse you at town meeting like we normally would anyway.
Okay,
No?
thank you.
Yeah, so is that, would that be kind of pocketed within one of the warrant articles?
Should be a budget amendment under the current year budget, Sharon? That's just something.
Yeah,
to do.
just like Article 4, when we're
Yeah.
doing the amendments, it's usually right there.
Okay.
Right.
Sorry to disrupt.
No,
That should have been
that's
the easiest part of the agenda.
no, that's not, that, you know,
Oh, you didn't see our minutes last night.
Yeah, the
We spent
discussion.
30 minutes, someone said.
Yeah, no, this was that's the part to be able to discuss it. And so now we'll go to the vote. Eric, we unmuted?
Abstain.
Abstain, okay. Jackie?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Mary Ann?
Yes.
Jeffrey?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Jean?
Yes.
Ed? So 701 on that vote. Any other business? Not appearing?
Oh, move to adjourn?
Let's go, Jean. Yep.
Second.
Thank you, Jeffrey. We still unmuted, Eric?
Yes.
Yeah. Jackie?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Mary Ann?
Yes.
Jeffrey?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Jean?
Yes.
Ed? Yes, we are adjourned. Thanks, everybody. Really appreciate it.
9 o'clock.